Thank you. I'll start all over. That was just a little practice there. Welcome to the May 13th Policy Committee meeting. And we have quite a few policies today, so that's always exciting. We're going to start with policies for first reading. So we have policy 807, health and safety policy. And this is replacing 4165, eye and face protection for staff, and 5145, eye and face protection for students. And this policy will be referenced in the student handbook. So the purpose of this policy is to assist the school district in promoting health and safety, reducing injuries, and complying with federal, state, and local health and safety laws and regulations. And we reviewed it, the second reading on this, reviewed and revised it was May 17th, 2022. And we have Lexi here with us to tell us the updates on the policy. So thank you again for being here. Would you just introduce yourself again for the record?
Yeah, my name is Lexi Neff. I am the district's health, safety, and environmental coordinator. So yeah, the updates on this were mostly general updates. There were a couple of updates from mays to shalls throughout, just due to matching what we're required to do legally by OSHA. And then I updated the name of the safety committee throughout, from the Health Safety Advisory Committee to Occupational Safety Committee. That's just what we're calling them now, to make it easier to understand who was responsible for the tasks. So that's everything that changed in 2B there. Section 3, I added the word employee just to specify that that section was specifically referring to employees. Updated that the specific safety programs are going to be made available on the district website instead of as an addendum to the policy, just because those need to be reviewed so frequently, just makes things a little bit easier. And then section 4 was added. That was policy 4165 before, I believe. Sorry, that one is 5145. So that was student PPE and eye protection. The only change from the old policy there was the update of the ANSI standard in the second paragraph of section A from 1968 to the 2020 standard. And then section 5, again, just those wording changes in that first paragraph there. And then I added a few new safety procedures that we have in place now, and then added some clarifying language to some of the other ones. I can go over those if you'd like, otherwise, just let you look at the list. And then it was mentioned in advance that in number 46 there, there was a reference to the Health Safety Advisory Committee that needs to be updated. So I have that in my notes to have corrected for the second reading. And then at the bottom of the page, paragraph D, a statement was added that all employees have the authority to stop work if they believe conditions may pose a danger to life and health. That's, again, just a statement that's required by OSHA procedures, so it's just good to have it called out specifically. And then section G says that personal protective equipment will be provided to staff, including the various different types that could be needed. And then in section 6, budget, just added a statement saying that the health, safety, and environmental coordinator is probably going to be the designee of the superintendent to manage the safety budget. And those were the only updates to 807.
Okay, thank you. A lot of good changes there. Board members, does anyone have any additional questions? And again, this is the first reading, so we will have a chance to review it again. People need more time to look through it. Member Michael.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here and working on this important policy. I have a couple questions. So under programs and plans section, which I believe is 5, according to my notes, we talk about near misses and how those should be reported. And I was wondering if you can give us more information on how we define near misses and how those are, like, that information is collected.
Yeah, so a near miss would be anything where basically an accident or an injury didn't happen because we got lucky. So say there was a puddle on the floor, but you didn't slip on it, or you slipped and you didn't fall. That would be an example of a near miss. Those are reported through an online reporting platform that's available on the staff website. There's a report an incident or a suggestion button, and there's just a couple fill-in-the-blank fields for any employee to access.
Great, thank you so much. And I assume that they're made aware of that like on an annual basis, just a reminder?
Yeah, so right now it's an annual basis. I'm working to update that to have a list sent out to the site leaders every month so that they'll be aware of what's going on.
Excellent. I had another question about our occupational safety committee that you have well described in here. Just noticing that in Minnesota statute, it's defined as the committee members must be selected by employees. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about how members are appointed to that committee.
Yeah, so I reach out to the different sites every time we need new members. Members have a 2-year term. It's rotating, so half switch out every year. And we look for volunteers, people that are recommended by peers. If there aren't volunteers, which is frequently the case, then I reach out to the site leaders and the unions for who they would recommend to represent them on that committee.
Awesome. And one clarifying question, when we talk about, we have someone from every site and then someone from every union, does that mean that there's a representative from every union from each site, or one person from each site and there's one person from each union?
Yeah, so there's one person from each union at a minimum and one person from each site at a minimum. Because there are more sites than unions, there's a little bit of overlap there. So the unions designate who they want to be their key representative.
Got it. That's an important job. How many people usually sit on that committee then?
That's a great question. I don't
Sorry,
remember
yeah.
off the top of my head. I
okay,
think it's around 20.
Okay, yeah, it seems like an important job. So thank them for stepping up and doing that. You mentioned also in the paragraph D where we added that employees have the authority to stop work. Yes. And when they have concerns, that's an OSHA required statement. And I'm just noticing we don't have, or perhaps we do, and I'm not seeing it, we don't have OSHA as a legal reference in our cross references. And I wasn't sure if we should add that or if that's kind of like standard embedded within some of our other legal references.
It'd probably be a good idea to add. Yeah, I can absolutely add that.
Is that appropriate to have that there?
I think so.
Okay. And then I was curious, in our cross-reference, the last one, oh, sorry.
Actually, back to that, Director Severance, do you have any concern about us adding the OSHA piece in there?
I don't, but I would hope we should reference the min OSHA because OSHA is a federal standard and min OSHA is actually more stringent than the federal OSHA. So just making sure that we're capturing the one that's Minnesota specific.
Thank you.
I was curious, the last cross-reference item is MSA 126.20, and I wasn't sure what MSA stood for.
Yeah, that I just pulled straight from the Student Policy 5145. I am not entirely sure what it references, but I didn't want to lose a historic reference either.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so cross-reference, the very last one in our cross-reference list, after all the MSBA model policies, there's MSA 12620. And when I did a search, I couldn't find anything that seemed relevant to this necessarily. But I also didn't put a lot of time into it, so.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just looked it up because it appears to be an old Minnesota statute that has been renumbered in different areas, so we'll find out what the new number is and if it still applies. Okay. It was just on the previous one, and so we didn't want it to be missed, and then we can look that up and get it updated to the correct number.
Fabulous. I think that's all I have for right now.
Member Lofold?
Just a quick question, because we still are doing, I just remember Dave Spooner giving us these safety updates. We still do that at HR Business? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
It's part of the written report in HR Business, yeah. Mhm. Thank you. Okay, any other questions for Lexi? Okay, great. Thank you so much, Lexi,
I'm up
on that
next, too.
one. And then just again, this policy will be referenced in the student handbook after we approve it. Okay. The next policy is 903, visitors to school district buildings and sites, and this is replacing 1080, visits to schools, and 6025, volunteers in schools. The purpose of this policy is to inform the school community and the general public of the position of the school board on visitors to school buildings and other school property. And this is a first reading. So go ahead.
All right, so very few changes to this one. I just wanted to make sure we had a more current revision. It was last done in 2022. So in section 2A, we just added the word guardians after parents to make sure we're being more inclusive. And then no changes at all to section 3 and 4. In section 5B, we removed the sentence about an addendum for where authorized school officials were listed, just to make procedure management a little bit easier. And then in bullet point 3 there, we added the option to put a boot on a vehicle if it's parked in an area where it's not supposed to be, so that we can get issues corrected that way. Because Duluth Police isn't able to issue parking tickets for us anymore. So that's just a different option we're looking to utilize. So that was it for the visitors to school section. And then in section 6, we just added that volunteer procedure in. I've heard that section B needs a little bit of attention there, just due to time for in-service for those volunteers. So that'll need to be possibly amended before second reading.
I did not see the reference to when it was last adopted, the 2022,
It was
at the end of the,
yeah, it's on the top of the
okay,
first page, yeah.
okay. I thought you were referring to another area there, okay.
And technically, Member Laflarcamp, that 2022 is when the MSBA last adopted it. I think this is a new policy for us. Is that correct?
Correct.
It was 1080 and 6025 is what this is replacing.
Okay, were there any additional questions?
Just to, go ahead.
Go ahead, Superintendent.
Yes, just you had mentioned section 6, part B being a challenge, and I would concur that would be something that we really need to give some thought on. And I'm not trying to call extra attention to it, but when I was reading that, I was like, that will be interesting to see how we can accomplish that. But I think we can try to figure something out, and I think that as we look at various positions, one thing that we've been talking about is how can we make sure that maybe there's somebody that has more of a responsibility for volunteer coordination or something along those realms.
Okay, were there any other additional questions on this policy? Okay. Member Michaelsell?
Sure, I have a couple items. So under volunteers, in section 6, paragraph A, item number 6, it states to provide opportunity for parents to become more familiar with school activities and/or operations. And just to be more inclusive, I was wondering if we wanted to consider adding guardians and community members to that statement.
Absolutely.
Great. And I look forward to hearing some of the stakeholder input for that statement around in servicing volunteers and seeing what that will look like once we have input from everyone who's will be part of that process, if necessary. I'd like to have a conversation about paragraph E under volunteers, section 6. It says volunteers must follow visitor procedures that are described in section 5. But when I read section 5, I see that as more of like the rules of when you're breaking, or one of the rules of being a visitor on our campuses, and not necessarily giving guidance on what the proper visitor procedures are. And so I wasn't sure if that needed to be fleshed out a little bit more.
I believe that's just talking about our right to deny people permission to visit property, and then about the unauthorized vehicles and that sort of thing. But if you believe there's more clarification needed, we could definitely add something if is there something specific you were looking for?
I think when I read that, I assumed it was going to be, since we're saying we must follow these procedures, that there would be a little bit more about what what a visitor does when they approach our schools or our sites, and what that looks like versus if you park in the wrong spot, we're going to tow your car. But again, if that's what we're needing to be clear on, then maybe just perhaps changing the wording so that's a little bit
Yeah.
more understandable of what the point was trying to be made there.
I think procedures, if you, guidelines, or you could say, volunteers must follow visitor procedures as listed in section 5, and granted, I think the in-service I don't think you want to put in policy, such specific details. So I think the way it might be confusing, but if they go through the in-service, they might know, but the volunteer will not know about all of that until they go through the in-service. So there's a little bit of getting too detailed. I think as we go through this policy, I just think this is a big step forward. And if I'll wait for my questions until you're done, but I just think volunteers must follow visitor
Expectations, guidelines.
Oh, yeah, expectations would be a good one,
And speaking.
as listed in 5.
Yeah, and in speaking to that, if we go to section 4, the first, or paragraph A under section 4, which is responsibility,
Yep.
this states that school district administration shall present recommended visitor and PSEO option student procedures and requirements to the school board for review and approval. So we're supposed to be receiving what those procedures are. And then it goes on to say, the procedures should reflect input from employees, students, and advisory groups, and shall be communicated to the school community and the general public. Upon approval by the school board, such procedures and requirements shall be an addendum to this policy. So the way that this model policy is provided to us and written, it seems as though with lots of stakeholder involvement that's spelled out here, we need to be making procedures that we then are going to be adding on to this policy and approving as a school board is how I'm reading that. And I'd love to have more of a conversation about what other people's thoughts are in that interpretation.
I might want to
Defer to the
add,
chair.
just a few years ago, when I was an AmeriCorps member, we actually had volunteer coordinators in all of our schools, and we did come up with some guidelines that we used for a couple years, kind of when we had that process going. And so I think And we base those on best practices of school volunteers that we worked with some state agencies on. So I'm sure we can come up with, and I know other districts probably have, some options there that can be kind of the broad consistent between the district, but then there might be some individuals that might be specific to an elementary school versus a middle school or high school. So, I know they're out there for some guidelines for us, kind of district-wide, that are real kind of standard and basic.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
So getting to that addendum, is an addendum then like a 903R? Or is it embedded in 903?
I think it would be the easiest to maintain it as 903R. Just
Yeah.
because it might need to be a
Because
little
an-
bit more flexible.
An addendum or a 903R doesn't necessarily have to come to the board to be updated or changed? Is that my understanding as far as those policies that we have an R after? Sometimes we,
Regulations are informational.
yeah, okay. Okay, there
Regulations
you
are
go. Okay,
informational, yeah.
Okay, that's what I wanted. So, just it's not even a question, it's just an observation or like an appreciation too, like if this is, like I was thinking that we adopted this in 2022, but you're right, in seeing it in this order at the top, that I realized that we really haven't had, something in the 100 series. We have some things covering this, and that the whole volunteer section is new. And I really appreciate the district taking this step forward. As we get into more and more just different scenarios that are happening in education across the country, that it's good to have a policy. So I know that being the first reading, this might be one that takes us a couple meetings as well. But having it, even if it stays in this state for this year, just to get it in policy, some standard procedures, but I really appreciate that. And I feel like it is a huge undertaking by our district, and sometimes I think, we need the policy, and then this is going to kind of, I would think, put us into spending more money to find staff or find time and to just manage volunteers. I know Denfeld has a volunteer coordinator in their building, the only one in the district, but even I don't think we don't send Denfeld volunteers through any kind of process. They just go through her. But yeah, it's good though. Thank you.
And there are some school districts that have, again, just a standard form with, say, 10 guidelines, and caregivers or parents or grandparents just read and sign as part of their training and commitment. I don't want to get in the weeds on this, but it's something that did just kind of come to mind is we want to make sure there is a policy or within the protocols around cell phone use and taking pictures, and that I know we've kind of struggled with sometimes with volunteers taking pictures that they shouldn't. But I do know, and I think many of us do know from just going into schools and volunteering, that many schools have some guidelines already. It's just, do we want to make them standard? So, yeah. Any additional questions? Member Michaelsell?
I was going to echo what you just said, and it's not that we're like letting volunteers freely roam the halls. Like, our schools have their own personal procedures in place. Some of them are actually even district procedures, I imagine, but putting them into policy just so that it's very clearly communicated with our community members, our family members, our staff, so that just everyone's on the same page. So,
And trying to get them more uniform, so as parents go or families go along with their student from the elementaries to the secondaries, they're expecting the same training and support.
Thank you, Lexi. Superintendent Magus?
Yeah, no, I was just thinking as we work on uniformity, maybe having one thing that, it's not a perfect training tool, but thinking about like some of the vector training we have or some of the individualized training modules that we have, something like that might be helpful to put people through, even if I would love to have something that was more hands-on and engaging, but at least having something like that would allow us to check a box to let people know that, yes, we've told people that they can't take pictures of kids and put them on their on their social media pages and things like that. That is an increasing concern that I've heard from Metro superintendents, and there have been even some like deep fake type things happening, and I think that that's something that many of the other districts around the state and country are looking at policies related to deep fake imagery and such. So I think we'll have to keep that in our mind as we move on. Not that I want to bring something as positive as volunteers in our schools into that realm, but you
Yeah.
always have to look at what is the worst case scenario so that we can avoid harm or liability.
And it could be tied into the background checks, when we do the background checks, if we do, you know, a online version or something, it kind of goes hand in hand with what people have to check off before they are volunteering in the schools. I'll tell you, when we did this a few years ago, and we really were consistent all across the district, and because I did a lot of the trainings in the role I was in at the time, it was very well received. And I would hear from particularly caregivers or grandparents who lived in other places and volunteered and really appreciated our procedures that we were using. And so I look forward to us having something more consistent. So thank you again for your work on this. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, thank you. And then just a reminder again, 903 would be replacing 1080 visits to schools and 6025 volunteers in schools. So again, we have had policies related to this. It's not the first. The next policy then is for second reading, and this is policy 413, harassment and violence. And with that, we're deleting 413 and 413R, and we're adopting the NSPBA model policy. And so the purpose of this policy is to maintain a learning and working environment free from the harassment and violence on the basis of race, color, creed, religion, national origin, or sex, age, marital status, familial status, status with regard to public assistance, sexual orientation, or disability protected class. So we have really been looking at this now for 2 months, so this is really, so is there any additional questions on this second reading? Member Lofold?
I can't pull mine up, but I think I remember my question from when I was working this afternoon. For some reason, mine won't open up on my computer right now. But I think we had talked about creating an opening that had something, a line or so about more specific to Duluth Public Schools, but maybe we just didn't feel it was important to do. Or do I have it?
It's added.
It's added? Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Yep, it was just an omission on my part. I missed it when I did the update, and so it's added, so we added it under number 2, general statement of policy A. We added a line saying harassment and violence of any kind towards any individual is prohibited in Duluth Public Schools.
But if members wanted it as part of the purpose, we could. Patty and I debated it, but we looked at where it was specifically calling out protected classes and thought that we could say we focus on protected classes, but we also prohibit it in general as well.
You know why it's not coming up on mine?
Slow.
Oh, maybe because it's large. Yeah, that could be. Okay. This is the one I didn't print out because I thought, you know, it would. Oh, did you? Okay.
Members have a preference to it staying in A where we added under general statement of policy, or adding it up to the top with the purpose?
I like where it is. And I just wasn't, I was listening to the last month's policy while I was working on this month's work. And so I just kind of heard that, and then when I looked at it, but that's good. I like it there.
I actually like it there too, but member Michelson?
Yeah, I support that.
Okay. Thank you, Patty, I'll make sure to highlight that when we do the second reading at the next meeting. And then again, this one will be voted on now, and really want to thank, I don't see Jason here, but Jason Crane did a lot of work on this policy, as well as many other staff, so. What? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Teresa, sorry. I thought Jason did a lot on that too, okay. Okay. So the next one is policy 726, bidding process, and we're renumbering that from 70, and the purpose of this policy is bids, RFPs, and quotes are obtained to ensure fair competition and transparency in the procurement process. Suppliers and/or contractors are invited to submit bids or proposals meeting predetermined specifications. This allows for evaluation of pricing and criteria to select the most suitable vendor. And Director Zunich, is there anything you want to highlight in this second reading of this?
Yes, thank you. When we presented the first reading, there was not the sentence under advertising and soliciting after the words Duluth News Tribune. We added bid ads will be placed on consecutive Wednesdays for a minimum of 2 weeks. Additional notifications may be included in other appropriate publications, and that aligns with the school purchasing laws. And that link was sent. You should be getting it. I sent it to Patty today, only like an hour ago. You'll get it. And other than that, we just made sure that the designated, the words district's designated project representative was all throughout the document. And designee by the deputy clerk of the school board will prepare a letter or memorandum to the school board in the agenda of the HR Business Services meeting, followed by a regular school board meeting. And then, of course, the language of Duluth Public Schools 709 is committed to providing an environment of mutual respect with the goal to ensure a diverse workforce is considered. Therefore, the winning vendor of this contract understands and agrees that their company shall comply with all applicable laws relating to discrimination in employment and be welcoming of applicants of all genre, sexual orientation, age, and race for employment with their company. Other than that, I think the question came up today if we should put the link of the school district contracting laws. You just need to tell me if you want to add that to it. I don't know if do we generally have links, Patty, in our policies?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but I would say if we do, we don't have them in very many, because
Okay.
I think I would
Okay.
remember if we
Okay.
had them in a lot. We might have a couple. I think like complaint form might be in one or something, but like minimal, but that doesn't mean we can't add a link. We would just have to remember if something were to change to update it.
Okay, because we do have the cross-reference of the school district contracting bid laws in there, so. Do you have any questions for me?
I guess want to be clear then, so are we going to add the link?
What is the will of everyone? We certainly can.
I mean, you would think this information is housed somewhere in a government website.
Correct.
And with a title that's easily like searchable and findable, I guess.
Yes,
So like when we have a statute, it's easy to look up statute 126.63 and find exactly what we're talking about. The title of this slightly generic, and so then it's hard to find it if you do a search.
It is,
So is there-
because it is with the Office of the State Auditor, and I don't think anyone would just naturally go there, so maybe we should add the link.
Yeah,
I'm okay with it.
Where
or
where
just
would
even a
you
better
add,
description.
where would you add the link?
Well, I think right next to where it says cross-reference school district contracting bid laws, towards the end, would that be okay?
And then maybe take off the underline.
Because then when they read that, they can go right to press on the link.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other member, Lofold?
Well, just for clarification, because I did not, try to find Minnesota statute 471.345, the uniform municipal contract. Is it helpful for someone to have reference to this when I'm under the impression that this bidding process policy for us is pretty, it's not unique to Duluth, but it is a unique caveat to that statute. So isn't it more confusing? I mean, it might support it in a bit, but
It's unique to school districts.
yes.
So that's the difference right there. And that is the one our auditors have us follow.
The one that we want to
This-
link.
The school
Okay.
district
Okay,
contracting.
okay.
That's the one they use. It's like, kind of like a checklist for them as well, to make sure that we published on time and did,
I got you. Okay.
yeah.
I was just gonna, I'll just add my comment that, as almost all of us on the policy committee do, I always look at what other districts are doing, especially because this doesn't have an MSBA kind of format. And I was very assured that, I just have a whole list of schools that have this very same type of bidding process. And in some districts, it's 724. I mean, it's housed in the 700s, and that's always reassuring that it's in the right place. But just know that, at least for me, it gives me confidence that other districts have it fairly close to what we've got. There's some things that you and Kathy worked on because it's the way that we do business here, but it's very, very much what districts are doing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Superintendent Magus?
Sure, just a couple of things, and I know we talked about it, so I hate to see things now and bring it up after we already did, but, so in the purpose, we say bids, RFPs, and quotes are obtained to ensure fair competition and transparency in the procurement process. But the title of the policy is the bidding process, so our bids should the title be the procurement process potentially? Or, I don't know, I'm just wondering, because there's subcomponents of it, but I'm fine if we
We
call it the
could.
bidding
I mean,
process.
we're
I think bidding
procure-
process is clear, but I'm fine either way. And then I would just suggest that we add letters under Roman numeral number 2, numeral.
Easy for you to say.
Yes, Roman number 2, so it'd be like bids would be A, advertising would be B, and
Oh,
so
okay.
on.
Sure.
And then we move the first request for proposal part up to the purpose.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
So where we call out the words that are part of the acronym RFP. So in the
Yes.
purpose, if we say bids, comma, requests for proposals.
Oh,
and then
spell
have
that out
pro-
as well.
Yeah, just flipping that. Sorry,
No.
that's on me because we looked at it together and
Sure.
I didn't think about it at the time.
Those are all very good suggestions.
I'm glad you brought that up. I meant to bring that up when we first read this, is that the RFPs, not everyone knows what that means. I was just wondering if the last paragraph at the end, the new statement that we have about Duluth Public Schools is committed to, if we would want to put that in bold, just to highlight it more.
The entire paragraph or just Duluth Public Schools ISD?
entire
7?
paragraph.
The entire, okay.
I'm wondering if it could even go up into the purpose.
I think that would be great if
Move under purpose, sure. Okay,
If members are in agreement with that as well, Member Lofold and Member Michael. We just kind of strengthen that statement at the beginning? Okay.
It was also pointed out to me in that paragraph, there's a typo. It says genre, and I think it's supposed to say genders, so I'll make that change too when I'm moving it up to the purpose.
Nowhere near as bad as one of the typos I made in the communication today.
it's all good.
I was just thinking of something, a podcast I was listening to on, about English and genres, and so when I was reading it, I was like, oh,
We got that.
we got that, yeah. Okay, any other, Member Lofold, did you have another
So just
comment?
going back to, we were talking about the bidding process, not that, but, so I have other districts that I saw, so Apple Valley says, they call their policy 724, calls for bids, instruction to bidders in official bid form. I don't know if that fits. North St. Paul, policy 724, calls it procuring materials and services. I don't know. Waconia just says purchasing policy, and nobody says bidding, which is interesting. I don't know, am I off base? I'm just saying, I don't have any, Anoka says purchasing / overview. Oh,
Yeah.
that's their page. I don't know if that's their policy. Okay.
I'd like to stick with the words bid, RFPs and quotes. I think they're specific and they align with the school contract law, so.
Perfect.
They're in there as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Michael?
The only other thing I was gonna reiterate is that when we were pulling this from our 7,000 series, there was quite a few policies that were all implemented at the same time and all reviewed at the same time. That kind of started with this, it started with site acquisition, then there's another one that's building design and drawings, there's another one about the bidding process, the next is awarding contracts, change in construction, supervision of construction, wage rates and hours. So it seems as though they were all being written for, must have been big building projects at that time, just to give guidance. And so it might be something worthwhile to the teams that I'm sure aren't busy at all, to just look in to see how, if it's necessary to update all of those as well, since we're starting this kind of snowball.
I think we had started the conversation that perhaps we don't even use any of those at all, so perhaps looking at removing those. However, Kathy Holman said that when she goes out to the sites and needs to have some clarification to some staff, she likes to pull out one of them. So I'll speak with her, and I'll speak with Teresa too, because a lot of this applies to facilities. But right now, I don't think that anyone is using those additional policies. I think they might be from 1970. So.
Superintendent Magus?
Yes, along with that, just our general conversation that we've been having is that we're noting that a lot of the 1,000 series tends to be more managerial process, and we might consider a more holistic review of the 1,000 series and maybe be able to make some larger recommendations for moving away from the 1,000 series and putting that into managerial language or procedures as opposed to policy.
And at the end of the meeting, we're going to have a little bit of discussion on some more processes with policies, but anything additional in 726?
No, I think we'll make those are great suggestions. We'll make those changes. So then do we come back for another reading, or we'll just be able to submit to the school board? Okay.
This can
thank
be
you.
submitted, yeah,
Wonderful.
because we're not changing the intent of it.
Great. Thanks for your help.
Thank you. Okay, then we are now under policies for review. And our first one is 110, website accessibility. The purpose of this policy, in order to comply with Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 and Title II of the Americans with Disability Act of 1990, websites must meet the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines as instituted by the World Wide Web Consortium. Those schools not complying are subject to official complaints from the U.S. Department of Education Office for Civil Rights, fines from the U.S. Department of Justice, and further legal action. As part of the WCAG 2.1 specification to make school websites accessible and ADA compliant, Duluth Public Schools is required to make public its web accessibility policy. Okay. And Adele, are you just going to walk us through the changes? I think we can all see them, but is there, looks like there's a numbering. 4 highlights the communications department.
I just want to start out by saying that there was a suggestion to change the purpose, and I inadvertently missed putting that copy on board book. So I will email it to you now, and I'll update it on board book, so you guys can look at what the purpose suggestion was. But as I call it up.
But is this the purpose right here? Do we? No.
There was a suggestion to change it, and so I need to give you that information so you guys can see it. Do you have a copy with the suggested change, so you can at least read it, and then I will, yep.
Ask if you could go ahead and read it.
Yep, so the suggested purpose change is Duluth Public Schools recognizes its responsibility to ensure that all individuals, regardless of disability, can access the information and services provided on our websites. This policy establishes a framework for achieving and maintaining website accessibility in accordance with Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 and Title II of the Americans Disability Act of 1990 by adhering to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines set forth by the World Wide Web Consortium. We strive to create an accessible and user-friendly online experience for all students, caregivers, and the members of the community. The other changes are simply minor. It's just cleaning up some information and our contact information.
Patty, you are going to put the new purpose up. So there,
Correct. I'm emailing it to the three of you as we speak. I keep having technical difficulties because the system keeps kicking me off the web. And then as soon as I get it to you guys, I'm going to download it directly into board book so our public will be able to view it at the same time.
okay, great.
I'd just like to note the irony of you getting kicked off the web during the website accessibility policy is being reviewed.
There was a question about should the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 and the Americans with Disability Act of 1990 be included under legal references?
We don't have any legal references at the bottom, but it can be easily added.
Is that the will of the board to put that, or this committee? To add those two under legal references?
Well, didn't we just add a legal reference into the bidding process policy, and Executive Secretary Paquette said, you know, it's not standard? I mean, so I don't have any objection, but then does that open up that every time we're going to, and we use legal reference a lot in many areas. So I don't know if we want to continue, although, do we see legal reference in other policies as
We
we've
do.
journeyed? Oh,
We
okay.
actually
Okay.
do see often legal references with, and then the cross-references with the
Okay.
state.
Well, then I don't have any problem with it. And I think the purpose statement is much more, you know, a much more welcoming introduction to this, rather than just to comply with Section 504, but that is the purpose. So I'm not faulting the original purpose statement, because it's exactly what the purpose is, but we can certainly welcome in our community and assure them that our policies are to help their experience be good.
Thank you. Another question was about individual school websites. Do they also follow required content accessibility guidelines? And I'm thinking back on the many trainings you've done with us around websites, and I'm pretty sure this is yes. Right?
Yeah, the answer is yes. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to go with Final Site as our website provider, because every single page has to go through me before it's published to the public.
Thank you. You've done a lot of work with our website and around safety and around consistency from site to site. And I was just giving you a shout out at a school today I was visiting, if they had questions about their website, to go to you. So, so thank you. Any other questions on this policy or comments? Member Michaelsell?
Thank you for reworking the purpose. It sounds great. I'm curious, does the website accessibility also then translate to our social media pages? Because I know different schools have different people in charge of their social media. Is there any, do we need to be conscious of them also understanding what the guidelines are?
Yes, I actually own all of our social media pages, all of our school social media, as well as our programs such as ALC, AEO, DAE, and and preschool are all owned by the district Meta business page, which I am in charge of. When I add someone new to one of the Facebook pages, I go through a training with them. And then everything on the district page has alt text on all of the photos.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that. And then I was just interested, I noticed that the MSBA doesn't have a current model policy on this. And I was wondering if anyone had any history as to how we came about having this, you know, well thought out policy when it wasn't something that's considered at the state level right now.
So back in 2018, many school districts and other government entities received complaints regarding their website accessibility. And as part of the settlement from that complaint is having a policy in place.
Interesting. Thank you for that history.
We should write that down someplace so that we have it for history purposes, Adele.
Well, that was way before me, so it obviously got
Yeah,
passed
yeah,
along.
Yeah, it got passed on somewhere. Okay, great. Any other comments or questions then for policy 110? And again, this was for review. We haven't made any major changes on it, so it will just have this review and be passed on. The next policy for review is 407, employee right to know, exposure to hazardous substances. The purpose of this policy is to provide school district employees a place of employment and conditions of employment free from recognized hazards that are likely to cause death or serious injury or harm. And it references Minnesota Statute 182.653, subdivision 2. Go ahead, Lexi, thank you.
Yeah, I read through this policy. We just updated some text in the regulation, and I didn't see any changes that were needed. One comment was brought to my attention about requiring annual and initial training. So section 4 talks about that annual training, and then section 5 talks about the new employee onboarding. But yeah, I think this policy does what it's intended to do and is pretty clear about it.
Any other questions or comments? Member Micasel?
Thank you. I was the one who asked about annual training, and I think the reason I did was because I would have assumed that that information would have been entered in under training schedule as a heading and target job categories. I wasn't looking for the information there. So I don't know if I feel strongly enough that it needs to be moved down to training schedule, or I would suggest that, but I don't know if we want to have a conversation about.
Yeah, I think for clarity's sake, those two could probably just get merged into one category, but I personally didn't feel the need to amend the policy. If that's the committee's opinion, I would be happy to change it.
So section 4 is talking about that full-time and part-time employees, make sure that they get trained every single year. And then 5 talks about anytime someone's new or changes positions, they also get trained on any new hazards that they might be coming in contact with. So I now understand like why those are separate, but that schedule thing, just if we added under section 5, like in addition to annual training for all staff, we can then say people who are newly hired to a new position or newly hired period also get.
Yeah, I think if we're rewording it, just moving that whole section 4 below the current language that's in section 5, and just saying annual refresher training will be provided, and that would be, if we would like to update it, that would be my suggestion.
Patty?
I was just going to point out, the way it's written in here is the way that it is in the MSBA model policy. So I just wanted you to take that in consideration when you're deciding what you want to do.
I actually liked it separate. To me, when I read it, it was clearer, so, yeah.
I think it's fine the way it is as well, especially if, I didn't look this one up for what other districts do, but I'm sure many districts probably have the same. I just think too that, we bring a lens to these policies, at least I do, I shouldn't assume you guys do, without a lot of understanding about what all of this is. So I'm really glad that Lexi brings these forward and has eyes of actual seeing hazardous or all of these different, exposures and things. She knows kind of where those are happening. And I would think that if our employees are familiar with this policy, that they also are familiar with when the training would be provided, whether it's a change, they're going from one job to another that has a little bit more training necessary, or if they're new hires, they're given a new employee, kind of training. So I think it's fine the way it is. Like the discussion, though. It's always good to get all of that figured out.
So we'll hear about the regulation later on when we go to regulations. But as always, we often will bring, if we're going to make a regulation change or changes in the regulation, we want to bring the policy in front of us at the same time for background and consistency training for us as well. So thank you again, Lexi, for that. We will move now to regulations that are informational. So 604 2R, new elective courses in secondary schools. This is replacing 6110, new elective courses in secondary schools. Hello. Dale, could you introduce yourself just for the record? And thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm Dale Uzelman, K through 12 curriculum coordinator for the district. So I'm bringing forward 604.2R. This will replace policy 6110. Policy 6110 has the same title. I was tasked with updating this policy. It was last updated in 95, and it was not reflective of current practices. There were names of roles in there that we don't even have currently. So I worked with a task force of a principal, a school counselor, and a couple of content specialists, and then also worked with Jen Larva to make sure that her eyes were on this as well. And when we started this process, we felt like this policy is more of a regulation because it outlines a process. And it includes specific steps and specific roles that are more likely to change a little bit more frequently than what we would probably want to see in a policy. So we wanted to attach it to policy 604, which is our policy on instructional curriculum. There's language in that policy that talks about offering additional courses, so that policy made the most sense. It really walks through the 5 steps that should be taken when a content committee is bringing forward a new course. You probably noticed that it's somewhat reflective of 6110. We just took the time to update it with current practices and current roles.
Superintendent Magus?
Yes, I was just wondering under Part 5, where we talk about the Director of Secondary Education along with other necessary secondary administrators and staff will review the course proposal and assessment considerations and make a final recommendation to the superintendent and school board. I was wondering, thinking about our current structure and the assistant superintendent and thinking about how to include him in the process, or he or she, depending, or they, depending on circumstance. So should it read, make a final recommendation to the assistant superintendent, superintendent and school board?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Just because I think they should be in the loop as well. And that way it's kind of going from like in sequential order of head of the department to superintendent to school board, because that would be kind of the chronological sequence in which it would happen as well.
Is that number 5 that you're referencing?
Yes.
Okay, okay,
So just adding assistant superintendent.
okay. Okay, Member Michaelsell?
2 questions. So is the way this is written now matching our current process? Or do we still need to update our process to match some of these like hopes and dreams?
Nope, this matches our current process. The one thing that I would say is different is when you look at number 3, and it gives you the 4, the 4 components that have to be included in a proposal. We go above and beyond that. So part of the conversation with the task force was what are the absolute necessaries? And that's where we came up with those 4. But in the actual practice, it's a much longer process. There are added components to that, but we felt like those were the 4 that needed to stay in place.
Great, thank you. And having 1 year and a few months under my belt as a school board member, I'm remembering back to our meeting where we were told or informed about all the new courses that were going to be offered in our course catalog. And so that was the first time we as school board members, correct me if I'm wrong, were receiving that information, and we then voted to pass it the following regular board meeting, I believe. Was that also the first time the assistant superintendent and superintendent were hearing about that, or would you have already been part of that process before they presented it to the board?
We would have been part of the process, especially the assistant superintendent, because he oversees that. That's part of why I was thinking to make sure that he's added in just as a procedural step. But we certainly go over the courses as well ahead of time.
I guess then, when I look at number 5, the way I'm initially reading it, and perhaps I just need to take more time to take it in, but it seems as though the committee members that are listed here then give a final recommendation to assistant superintendent, superintendent, and school board. In terms of timing, it's not all at the same time, it's you guys first. And I don't know, maybe I'm just getting a little bit too in the weeds. Oh, and Member LaFleur is nodding yes.
No, I actually think we could say, make a recommendation to the assistant superintendent and a final, followed by final recommendation to the school board. Because that would kind of show that there's a sequencing and I don't mean to see, gatekeeping isn't the word I want to use, but just sort of a checks and balances piece there where we're weighing in on it before it comes to the school board as a final recommendation.
I have a question for clarity too, is that you said it comes to the school board for recommendation, but then do they actually have to approve it, the school board, or is it just?
Well, it does say that
Does?
in the
Okay, I missed that.
sentence before the last sentence. The school board shall approve all newly created
Oh,
elective
okay.
courses before
Perfect.
they are offered in the course catalog.
Okay, thanks.
So besides number 5, adding assistant superintendent, is there any other comments? Again, this is just for informational for us. Okay.
I have my mic on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Member
Mine-
Loeffel, go ahead.
Mine isn't anything to change this. This looks like really great stuff, and it just reminds me of sometimes in the early days before we had a lot of curriculum staff to help us craft policy, that there were probably times. But I was just going to make a mention to Member Mike Sells. You know, I think there's more to the process than this too, because we get presented these new offerings at a COW meeting usually, that they go over all of those potential, and does that also then, and then we vote on that catalog as well of classes, yeah. I just remember them coming before us a number of times with just different classes, and I keep encouraging you to continue going. I think that there's lots of classes that we are potentially offering and in the mix, so your job is well planted here. That's good, we like it, thank you.
Thanks.
Dale, I just always appreciate what a good job you do bringing committees together and having a lot of eyes and a lot of different perspectives when you're reviewing many of the policies that you've brought in front of us. So really appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's hard to do, is to bring a whole bunch of people together, so.
But worth it. And they were a great group. They were very helpful.
Excellent, thank you. I think that's it under 604. The next one is 407. Thank you, Dale. 407R, Employee Right to Know Program. And thank you again, Lexi. You're our star today.
Just trying to make one long day out of it. So,
Many long days getting all of these here.
yes. All right, so this one, very similar to the regulation Dale just brought forward, is just updating some verbiage, job descriptions, and then current practices with the technology. So a lot of this is talking about safety data sheets. Previously, they were kept in binders, now they're kept in an electronic log. So there's references added on how to access the electronic log, both on the staff portal of the district website, as well as QR codes, where employees or even students could scan the QR code and get brought to our safety data sheet library. So that is all the changes on the first page. And the second page. And then the third page, section E, is just those job title updates. And section F2B is just a change of the building name to reference the facilities building here at the District Services Center. So,
Okay, so 407R, employee right to know. Any regulation, any other comments? Okay, just again, thank you for just getting consistency with what the practice is or what the titles are with our regulations. So it takes a lot of work to do that. Any other comments? Superintendent Magus?
Just a recognition of what you're saying as well. Lexi has been very instrumental in making sure that we have clear expectations and similar ways of doing things within all of our schools. And that's one of the main areas under improving systems that we've identified. And so really grateful for your work.
Okay, great. Thank you. Now, the last, again, these are all informational, they're all forms. The first one is updating 413F, harassment, violence, complaint form. And what we added was the harassment, violence on there. Do you want to go over anything else on this form?
Yeah, the only addition from the last meeting was the addition of the familial status on this form as well.
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments? Okay, we'll move to the next one, updating 515F, the student record update form.
I can speak to that one. The only change on that is we had to update the email address that the forms are submitted to. So that was the only change on that form.
So where does that go, the census, ISD709.org?
I believe it goes to the enrollment center.
Makes sense. Any other comments or questions? Okay. And then Form 416, Attachment H.
I can speak to this. This goes along with the drug and alcohol policy that we brought forward last month or the month before. And this is a form that we use with our, all of our drivers that are under the federal law, just that we need to check the clearinghouse once a year to make sure there are no violations. So this is a form that they have to fill out.
Is that for any vehicle?
Just the federal, so the bus drivers.
Oh, the bus.
And we do have a few utility operators because of the equipment that also have that licensure. But primarily, it's the bus drivers.
So not the new vans?
No, because you don't need a CDL for that.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, that's the key, okay. Okay, any other questions then? Thank you. And then the last one is the general complaint form. Who is going to speak towards that?
Yeah, it was when we were discussing that policy at the last meeting, there was something brought up, do we have just a general one? So it was a suggestion from the committee members, so they went ahead and created a general complaint form, and it is available on our website.
Where is it available on the website?
It's in the same place that the harassment one is.
Okay.
I can find it here real quick.
Thank you for taking that suggestion and giving another option for people to bring up concerns.
Yeah, Becca Lester in the HR department was instrumental in getting that done. And it's available on our website under Families and Forms.
Okay. Okay, any comments on that?
Just a submission, so if the form is on our website, do they have to print it, fill it out, and bring it in? Or does it open with the ability to type right on the form and then submit it?
The one that's available on the website is an electronic form that they fill out, like a Google form that gets submitted. I believe the paper forms are available, so, but when you go to the website, it's an electronic complaint form.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your work on that. And just again, apology, Teresa, to not giving you the recognition for the work you did on 413. So thank you so much for clarifying that. So that is all for our committee. And again, all of this will be brought forward at our May meeting coming up on, is it the 20th, I believe? I wanted to just, a couple of general things, because we're in the month of May. We have not had a July policy meeting in the past, just because a lot of staff are gone often, and just, it gets to be kind of a short month. So I just wanted to confirm that's what we are going to do again. We do, though, want to consider bringing, to have a longer meeting, either the end of June or mid-August, some early August, mid-August, so we can go through a chunk of the 1,000 series policies at one time. And so maybe like a 3-hour meeting or so. So I wanted to just run that by you all to see what you thought of that. And if so, we would just put out a Google Doc to come up with some dates that could work, and we can plan ahead for it. So any thoughts on those comments?
Our cows and regular board meeting have trained me well for long meetings, so that's fine.
I was wondering what that smile was about. Remember, Mike Cassell? Yeah.
So who would join us on this 3-hour journey to bring us through the 1,000s? Is it like all the, HR and business and finance and Patty and just us?
It
Or would it have to be all those different people that have something within those the 1,000 series policies? As we looked, if we're looking at something and it has to do with curriculum, does Dale have to be with us? Or would you determine which 1,000 ones we're going to get out and?
Yeah, we won't just randomly
Oh,
go,
we won't.
let's look at the 1,000 and
Okay,
pull out.
okay.
We'll have some thought put in before the meeting on kind of which sections, and then who appropriately would need to be at the table. But Superintendent Magus.
And when we go through those, does that then